I never once thought a near-death experience could be real. I'd always told myself it was just the brain shutting down, a last strange dream before the dark. Nothing more. But then came that June morning, the day everything I believed about guilt, forgiveness, and what waits after life broke apart like glass in my hands. My name is Daniel Peets. For 10 minutes and 15 seconds, my heart stopped, my body stilled, and yet, I was still there. Those moments carved a scar into my soul and showed me something I can never forget. It began as an ordinary summer morning, warm and bright, full of easy laughter and small promises. My wife, Elizabeth, had spent weeks putting together our first real family trip to the coast. She was glowing with excitement, her voice dancing as she spoke about how perfect it would be. Our son, James, 8 years old, sat behind us, wide-eyed, soaking up a story my mother, Margaret, was telling him. In the back, little Anna, 10 months old, rested in her car seat, drifting into a soft sleep, her chest rising and falling like a tiny bird's. We were heading for what we thought would be the best vacation of our lives. Elizabeth reached over and squeezed my hand, her smile like sunlight. "This one will be our best yet," she said, her words ringing with joy. I squeezed back, smiled, and told her she was right. I didn't know those would be the last words we would ever speak to one another. Route 16 curved and climbed along the edge of the ocean, the road bordered by steep cliffs and endless blue water. It was a road I'd driven many times, but that day it felt like it stretched forever. The salt air rushed through the cracked windows. Anna stirred softly. Margaret laughed at the end of her story, and then everything shifted. I didn't see the truck, not until it was too late. Later, I'd learned the driver had fallen asleep at the wheel after driving all night. 68 miles per hour, crossing the center line, coming straight for us. 2 seconds to react. Not enough time. The crash was a roar, louder than thunder, metal screaming, glass bursting, airbags exploding like gunfire. My whole body jolted, pain tearing through me like fire, and then, as suddenly as it had come, the pain vanished. It was replaced by weightlessness, a strange, soft weightlessness, like drifting upward through water toward light. My eyes, if I even had eyes, opened to a new place. I wasn't in the car anymore. I was above it, in a silent, still space. The wreckage lay below, a terrible picture I couldn't look away from. Our SUV crushed on the driver's side, the truck mangled into it, a brutal meeting of steel and speed. I saw flashing lights, red and blue, swirling in the air like warnings, but there was no sound, none, only a deep, aching quiet. Then I saw them working on me, paramedics rushing, pulling my body from the wreckage, their hands moving fast, urgent, blood covered my face. They pressed hard on my chest. One of them grabbed the defibrillator. Another slipped a tube down my throat. "Clear," he shouted, though I heard it not with ears, but as if the word moved through the air. My body jerked as the electricity hit, but I felt it like a distant echo, happening to someone else far below. But my focus wasn't on my body. It was on my family. Elizabeth. My beautiful Elizabeth. They pulled her from the passenger seat. Her face was calm, too calm, her skin pale like wax. There was no breath, no movement. They laid a white sheet over her. I wanted to scream, to reach out, to hold her hand one last time. But I had no voice, no hands, nothing. Behind her, Anna's tiny car seat had been crushed beyond recognition. A young paramedic, her eyes bright with tears she tried to hide, lifted Anna gently from the wreckage. She held her for a moment, just one moment, and then laid her beside Elizabeth, covering them both with the same white sheet. My mother, Margaret. She had been sitting behind me, where the impact was strongest. They were working on her too, pushing, breathing for her, trying. But somewhere deep inside me I knew she was gone. James, my boy, my only boy. He was breathing. Unconscious, but breathing. They lifted him carefully, bracing his neck, rushing him to an ambulance. His small arm dangled from the stretcher. I wanted to follow, to run after him, to hold him safe. But something else was happening, something pulling me away. Grief hit me like a wave. Guilt pressed down like a stone. I had been driving. I should have seen the truck sooner, should have reacted faster, should have done something, anything. I had failed them. Elizabeth, Anna, my mother. Failed them all. I tried to call out, tried to shout their names, but no sound came. Nothing at all. As I was being carried farther and farther away, the world below me blurred until it was little more than shadows. The wreckage, the screams, my family, all of it slipping from my reach like water through my fingers. Something was pulling me, guiding me into a darkness that stretched out forever, a tunnel with no end in sight. But darkness wasn't just an empty void. It pressed against me, heavy and suffocating, filled with grief so sharp it cut into me, guilt so deep it felt like it would crush what was left of my soul. I wasn't moving through it so much as being swept away by it, flung at an impossible speed through this endless place with no direction, no sense of hope, no way back. All I could feel was the knowledge that 3 generations of my family were gone, their lives snuffed out by my mistakes, and I had no way to fix it, no way to make it right. And then, in one sudden heartbeat, it all changed. The darkness vanished as if it had been ripped away, and I was standing in light. It didn't grow or slowly appear. One moment there was nothing but black, and the next I was wrapped, consumed, held in a light so vast it seemed to have no edge. It wasn't harsh or blinding. It was alive, warm, like stepping into an ocean of love. It didn't just shine. It poured into me, filling every hidden corner, every wound. It washed the pain of the crash out of my body as if it had never been there. But the guilt and grief remained, clinging to my spirit like a weight I couldn't shake. Floating there in that living brightness, I began to sense that I wasn't alone. There were others nearby, though I couldn't see them at first. And then, like a veil lifting, I saw Elizabeth and my mother standing together. They were smiling at me. They looked exactly as they had that morning before the crash. Elizabeth in her blue sundress, my mother in her favorite cardigan, both shining with a peace I had never known while they were alive. My heart lurched. I wanted to run to them, to hold them, to fall into their arms. But I couldn't move. I was frozen where I was, trembling between joy and sorrow. Joy at seeing them again, sorrow at what I had lost. Yet as their smiles reached me, something began to shift inside me. I understood, not with words but in some deeper way, that they weren't angry. They weren't upset. All the guilt I had been carrying wasn't mine to hold anymore. They had forgiven me long before I had even known I needed forgiveness. And in that moment, in that light, I felt the truth press into me. There was more than this world. There was something beyond the darkness, something beyond death, a place of peace, of forgiveness, of love, greater than anything I had ever imagined. I stayed there, suspended in that eternal light, and knew death wasn't the end. It was part of something larger, a journey we all take whether we're ready or not. Maybe it led to a place where pain is healed, where the love of those we've lost is never gone. The light around me pulsed brighter, more vivid than anything I had ever seen. It wasn't dull or washed out like the world I had left behind. It was alive, breathing, real in a way I couldn't explain. And from the beings around me, especially my mother and Elizabeth, I felt waves of peace radiating outward, steady and sure, untouched by the horror we had just lived through. There were no wounds on them, no blood, no brokenness, no scars. It was as though everything painful had been wiped away completely. They were whole, radiant, at peace. I tried to reach for them, but when I looked for my arms, there was nothing. My body was no longer tangible. My voice, when I tried to call out, echoed strangely through the space, warped by my inability to touch or be touched. Elizabeth, Mom, I called, my voice trembling, breaking. My heart ached with a grief too large for words, but their presence was so calm, so steady, that it almost felt impossible. I tried again to reach for them. My thoughts were scattered, my words falling apart before I could even form them. Elizabeth's smile was soft, filled with understanding that went beyond anything I had ever known. She spoke my name, clear, gentle, her voice carrying a peace I couldn't grasp. "It's okay, Daniel," she said, her words moving through the air like a comforting breeze. I felt the what she meant, but it wasn't enough. It couldn't be enough. I needed more. I needed answers. "It's not okay." I cried out, my voice tearing itself apart in the space around us. "You're gone. Anna's gone. I was driving. I should have seen it coming." My mother's voice came then, firm, steady, like it had been when I was a child. It cut through the storm of my thoughts. "There's nothing you could have done. Nothing." Her words were soft but unshakable, a reminder that I wasn't responsible for the unthinkable, but the guilt in me refused to quiet. It clawed at me, heavy and relentless. "But I was driving," I protested, the words breaking from me. "I should have known. I should have done something." Elizabeth moved closer, her presence surrounding me even though I couldn't feel her touch. It wrapped around me like warmth, like a memory of being held. "The other driver," she whispered, her voice trembling like a faint echo of a nightmare. "Daniel." She fell asleep at the wheel. There was nothing you could have done, nothing any human could have done to stop it. The words landed heavy, but they barely touched the storm inside me. Grief rose up like a dark ocean, swallowing every thought that tried to breathe. Anna, my baby sister, just a spark of life, taken before she could even grow wings. "But she was only a baby," I said, my voice breaking, splintering under the weight of it all. "She barely had a chance." "She's with us now," my mother said softly, her words like a warm hand laid over a wound. Her tone carried so much tenderness it almost broke me again. "She's whole, she's perfect, she knows only love now." Her words were a small, quiet comfort, but the sorrow clung to my soul like smoke that refused to lift. I could feel it pressing against me, heavy, endless. I couldn't breathe under the weight of it. "I want to stay too," I whispered. "I want to be with you both." Elizabeth's face softened at my words, but in her eyes was something new, a flicker of concern, of sadness. "You can't, Daniel," she said gently, her voice a melody of love and ache. "It isn't your time. You can't stay here." The question burst out of me before I could even stop it, raw, fierce, like an animal breaking free. Why not? Why them and not me? But the answer came like a tide against my rage. "Not alone," my mother said, her voice a balm poured over my breaking heart. "James needs you, Daniel. He needs his father." And in that instant, the very air around me seemed to shift. The sound of his name, James, my son, rolled through me like thunder. I saw him waking up in a hospital, his world shattered beyond recognition, his mother gone, his sister gone, his grandmother gone. The thought of it crushed me, suffocated me, left me gasping for air I could not find. "He'll have another family to care for him," I argued, my words weak and hollow even as I spoke them. "Your brother, Elizabeth's sister, they'll love him like their own." But Elizabeth shook her head, her expression steady as stone. "No, Daniel, he needs you. He needs his father." A wave of panic and self-doubt slammed into me. I wasn't enough. I had never been enough. Not the father he needed. Not the man I should have been. "I can't do it," I confessed, my voice trembling with fear, my hands shaking as if the very truth of it were poison. "I'm not strong enough. I've never been the better parent. You always knew what to do, what to say. I'll fail him." "You won't," Elizabeth said, her words carrying a certainty that pierced through the storm inside me. "You're stronger than you know." For a heartbeat, just one heartbeat, I believed her. But the guilt still clawed at me like a living thing. "How do I live with the guilt?" I whispered, my voice small and breaking. "How do I carry this?" Before either of them could answer, something changed. A presence filled the space around us, vast, powerful, unlike anything I had ever felt. It was not simply light or warmth. It was something deeper, older, beyond anything words could ever hold. The light around us began to move, to shape itself, not into something I could clearly see, but into something I somehow knew. My heart recognized it before my mind could. In all my years of sitting in pews, praying, reading scripture, I had never touched even the edge of this moment. The presence before me radiated such authority, such love, it was almost too much to bear. When he spoke, it wasn't one voice. It came from everywhere, within me, around me, through me, like the very air had become sound. Daniel. Just my name, but it broke something inside me. I wept without knowing how, tears spilling from a place beyond my body. "Lord," I managed to say, my voice shaking, feeling small, unworthy, undone by his presence. "You carry a burden that is not yours to bear," he said. I shook my head, instinctively fighting the words. But I was responsible for them. I was driving. They were in my care. "Do you believe I am sovereign over all things, Daniel?" he asked. His voice was gentle but firm, like a river that could not be stopped. "That not a sparrow falls without my knowledge?" The weight of his words pressed into my spirit. I had read them so many times, but now they were not just words. They were truth. Unshakable. "Yes, Lord," I whispered, my heart aching with the depth of his question. "But there are no buts with me, Daniel," he said, his tone a perfect balance of love and unmovable authority. "If you believe I am sovereign, then you must accept that what happened was permitted for reasons beyond your understanding." "Why?" The word erupted from me like fire. "Why take them? Why not me instead? Why leave James without his mother?" "My ways are not your ways," he said, his voice steady, firm, yet filled with love. My thoughts are not your thoughts. Just as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways. The words, scripture I had known since childhood, landed in me like stones. There was no room to argue, no room to stand. Yet still, the ache in my heart remained. I needed more. The driver who struck you, Jesus said softly, his voice flowing like a gentle current, carrying both sorrow and truth. He shifts, holding guilt just as heavy as mine. His name is Thomas. He has 3 children just like me. He nodded off for less than 10 seconds. The realization hit me like a thunderclap. I hadn't even considered the other driver until now. The anger I had buried, the blame I had stacked onto my own shoulders, suddenly had another person attached. Why did you let him drift off? Why didn't you reach him? Jesus' voice wrapped around me like a warm cloak. He asks himself the same thing. Why must others pay for his moment of weakness? And in that instant, a strange, unexplainable link formed between me and Thomas, the man who, in a heartbeat of carelessness, had shattered my world. Will you forgive him? Jesus asked quietly with a tenderness that made the words tremble in the air. Will you speak forgiveness aloud? The answer burst from me before I could even think. Yes, Lord, I whispered to my own surprise. I forgive him. You must tell him yourself, Daniel, when you return. His presence seemed to swell around me, a warmth that reached into every corner of my being, a love that bent the rules of time and space. And in that moment, the entire landscape of my soul shifted. The thought of facing life without Elizabeth, without my mother, without little Anna felt unbearable. Each heartbeat a hammer against my chest. The weight of imagining their absence pressed down, a stone I could not lift. James II needed his father. Jesus simply said, "Show me." And in the next heartbeat, everything changed. Suddenly, I was standing in a hospital room. The sterile, white walls and the smell of antiseptic clashed violently with the warmth of the memories I had been ripped away from. James lay in the bed, small and fragile, encased in casts, his limbs wrapped in bandages and braces, each one a stark reminder of how vulnerable he was. Seeing him like that, unconscious and defenseless, pierced my soul. Yet even there, I could see the steady, delicate rise and fall of his chest, the faint rhythm of life whispering through the room. The doctor spoke quietly, his voice low, as though the air itself could shatter fragile hope. His brain activity is strong, little fractures, but children are resilient. Physically, he should recover. The nurse, her voice soft, full of quiet sympathy, asked about the rest of the family. The doctor shook his head, sorrow etching every line of his face. The grandmother, the mother, DOA, and the baby girl too. Each word felt like a hammer strike, reverberating in the hollow pit of my chest. The father, still in trauma. They're trying to restart his heart. The nurse looked down at James, her words almost a whisper. Poor kid, he'll wake up to find his whole world changed. I could barely breathe. What could I possibly give him? What comfort could I offer when my own world had collapsed into dust? The doctor spoke again, quieter now, resignation in every syllable. He still has his father if we can bring him back. Then silence, thick and suffocating, stretching across the room. He made a note on James' chart and left without another glance. And then I felt it. A presence, gentle yet undeniable, pressing against the edges of my soul. A hand on my shoulder, though nothing touched my skin. Elizabeth. He needs you, Daniel, she said, urgency threading her tone, more than he's ever needed anyone. I stood frozen, overwhelmed, my voice a fragile whisper. I don't know how to be both mother and father. I don't know how to help him through this, when I can barely imagine surviving it myself. You will never be alone, Jesus said, his presence filling the room, flooding it with a light and warmth so intense it shook the very air. I will be with you always, even to the end of the age. Words I had known in scripture now wrapped around me personally, a promise etched directly into my heart. The guilt, I said the word again, feeling it rise like a mountain inside me, a weight I could not cast aside. How do I live with this, when they didn't? Jesus' voice was soft, yet undeniable. Do you believe I died for your sins, Daniel? Yes, Lord. All of them, I answered, letting the truth of his sacrifice wash over me like sunlight through storm clouds. Then believe I died for this guilt too, he said, words cutting through the turmoil, shattering the storm in my mind. Though it is not yours to carry, will you cling to it and reject the gift I have already given? The guilt that had seemed endless now felt almost stubborn. as though I had clung to it by choice, refusing the freedom he offered. And Thomas, the man whose mistake had ripped everything apart, what about him? My grace is enough for him as well, Jesus replied. If he will accept it, perhaps you will be the one to guide him toward it. And in that moment, the weight of everything, the anger, the grief, the despair began to shift, moving like clouds across a sky, slowly letting in light, while the world outside this sacred space waited for me to return. The thought of standing before the man who had taken everything from me, the man whose choices had torn my world apart, and not condemning him, but instead offering him forgiveness, it struck me like a wave, knocking the breath from my chest. The weight of it pressed against my heart, so heavy and so strange I could barely stand under it. My mind kept repeating the same words, unable to believe them, unable to let them go. Your guilt serves no one, Daniel. Jesus spoke again, his voice steady, but wrapped in a love so deep it reached into places I hadn't known were still alive. Not Elizabeth, not your mother, not Anna, not James, and certainly not me. I did not die for you to live chained to guilt. I already paid for it. His words fell over me like warm water, washing through the cracks of my broken soul, pulling loose the layers of shame I had carried since the moment of the accident. For the first time in so long, I felt air moving inside my chest. Let it go. Elizabeth's voice came, soft but firm, her eyes steady on mine. For James, for yourself, for us. We're at peace, Daniel. My mother's voice followed, strong and clear, her presence so real I could almost feel her arms around me. We need you to find peace too. The light around them pulsed and shimmered, drawing me closer. Yet at the same time, I felt myself starting to drift. It was as if something unseen was pulling me away, away from their faces, away from the warmth, away from the glow that wrapped us. Will I see you again? The question broke from me before I could stop it, trembling, my voice carrying all the fear and hope still tangled in my heart. They smiled, both of them, and the peace in their faces was like sunlight. I felt Jesus smile too, that same quiet strength radiating from him. In the blink of an eye, he said gently, what feels long to you will pass quickly, and then eternity together. I drank in every detail, the curve of Elizabeth's smile, the warmth in her eyes, the strength in my mother's face, now free of pain and shadow. I looked at Elizabeth and saw only love. I looked at my mother and felt the fierce, unshakable strength that had always defined her, now shining even brighter in this place of light. And Anna? My voice cracked when I said her name, my heart aching with a pain that was still too large for words. She's here, Elizabeth said softly, her voice rich with love. She's perfect, whole, and loved. She'll be waiting for you too, when it's truly your time. The pull became stronger now, like a tide tugging at my soul. The light around them began to blur, and my heart fought against it. I love you, I called out, my voice breaking. I'll take care of James, I promise. We know. Elizabeth's voice reached me through the brightness. We love you too. And then Jesus' voice, gentle, strong, unshakable, followed me as everything began to fade. Remember, Daniel, I am with you always. Darkness returned. But I was not the same. I felt the weight of his words echoing through me, steady and sure. And I knew, even in that moment, that clinging to my pain would never bring them back. The grief, the anger, the endless questions, none of it could fill the emptiness. But forgiveness. Forgiveness could open a door. Forgiveness could bring a measure of peace. I could choose. I could choose to release the bitterness that had gnawed at my soul, not for him, but for me, for James, for the life still in front of us. Thomas, I said at last, my voice quiet but steady, holding on to this anger doesn't change anything. It doesn't undo the accident. It doesn't bring them back. All it does is keep us trapped, drowning in resentment. I forgive you, not because it's easy, but because I choose to live. His face lifted to mine, disbelief and confusion written across it. But you've lost so much. How can you just forgive me? I haven't forgotten, I told him, my voice low but sure. I'll never forget. I carry them with me in every moment, but I won't let their memories be drowned by hatred. That's not what they would want. Silence fell between us, heavy but not suffocating. The pain was still there, deep and raw, but it was no longer the sharp, all-consuming blade it had once been. There was space now, space to breathe, to heal, to begin again. Healing wasn't easy. It never is. But it was possible. Over the next few months, Thomas and I stayed in touch. Letters, emails, small steps. He still wrestled with his guilt, his own shadows now are behind. I couldn't save him, but I could offer him the same grace I had been given in my darkest hours. Meanwhile, James and I began to build something new. It wasn't the life we had planned, but it was a life. We started to find a rhythm, small pieces of joy threading through our days. James healed slowly, physically, emotionally. The nightmares still came, but not as often. And when they did, we faced them together. We leaned on each other, step by step, learning again how to hope, how to laugh. And when the grief crept back, we didn't run from it. We faced it together, knowing we weren't alone. 6 months after the accident, standing in a park, watching James run with other children for the first time since that night, something inside me shifted. Even though the marks of the past would always linger, they no longer had the power to hold me down. We were moving forward, side by side, and somehow that was enough. In those quiet, stretched out moments, I felt suspended between two worlds. One foot rooted in the life I had always known, and the other stepping into a light so pure it felt endless. The weight of guilt, that relentless shadow that had clung to me for years, seemed to loosen, lifting just a little, like a chain slowly coming undone after far too long. I whispered to myself, realizing deep inside that clinging to anger or bitterness could never change the past. No one would return, no matter how desperately I tried to hold on to what was lost. I spoke aloud what I needed to hear, allowing the truth to settle gently in my heart, and strangely it made sense. I had been forgiven for things I had never been able to fix, I admitted. None of us ever truly deserve forgiveness. We are all just given it, he said, his voice so soft I almost didn't hear it. A small, knowing smile spread across my face, because in that instant, we shared a truth bigger than words. Forgiveness isn't about deserving it. It's about receiving it with an open heart. We talked for hours, our words flowing together like a quiet, steady river. Each sentence unveiled pieces of ourselves that had been buried under years of pain and silence. He told me about his 3 children, about their dreams, their laughter, the tiny joys and everyday victories he had watched unfold. He spoke of the life he had built after 15 years of careful work behind the wheel, a life that had been shattered in a single, sudden moment. In that time, I didn't just see the man who had caused grief and heartbreak. I saw a father, a human being, a man carrying the weight of tragedy on his shoulders every day. I showed him pictures of my own family, Elizabeth, my mother, Anna, not to reopen old wounds, but to honor the lives that had continued, full of love and memory. They weren't just victims, they were whole people, cherished and remembered. By the time we finally slowed, exhaustion had settled into our bones, yet there was also a strange lightness, as if simply speaking and listening had opened a crack in the walls we'd built around ourselves. And without even thinking, I asked if I could pray with him. He nodded, eyes glistening, overcome by emotions too deep for words. In that small diner booth, amid the hum of strangers' conversations and the soft clatter of dishes, we bowed our heads. I prayed, not just for peace, but for healing. For the possibility of a future where guilt would no longer dominate, where hearts could mend and souls could breathe. That prayer became a moment of awakening. It wasn't just words. It was a recognition of the power of forgiveness, a force that could shift not only him, not only me, but the spaces between us. In that light, in that fragile, quiet space between despair and hope, clarity arrived. The guilt didn't vanish entirely, I think it never will, but it no longer chained me as it had before. And I understood, with every fiber of my being, that I had been given more than a second chance at life. I had been given a second chance at forgiveness, at seeing the world without the suffocating weight of blame. Over time, I began to build a life that was completely different from the one I had before. A life shaped not only by the terrible loss I had endured, but also by the strange, quiet love that had taken root in its shadow. Day by day, I learned to stand again. I learned to breathe without feeling like the weight of grief would crush my chest. I became someone James could lean on, not just as a parent trying to hold the pieces together, but as a living reminder that love and forgiveness are not accidents. They are decisions we make every single day, even when our hearts ache. I didn't tell him about the shift, about my vision of that place filled with light and love, until he turned 18. Even then, it wasn't easy. I saw the questions in his eyes long before I spoke. I saw the way he carried a quiet longing, a desperate hunger for answers about the mother he had lost too soon. When I finally opened my mouth and let the words out, he sat there, silent, tears streaming down his face, as if each word I spoke landed inside him like a weight and a blessing all at once. His heart seemed torn between the world he knew and the world he could only imagine. He looked at me and asked, his voice shaking, "Was it real?" And in that moment, I knew I was standing on sacred ground. Everything in me wanted to reach for him, to hold him, to give him more than words could carry. It was more real than anything I've ever known, I told him, my voice steady, but my hands trembling. It changed me. It remade the way I understood God's love, his forgiveness, and what waits for us beyond this life. Then James whispered something I'll never forget. "I wish I could have seen Mom too," he said, and his voice cracked on the last word like something fragile breaking. My heart clenched, but I took his hand and whispered back, "You will." The truth of that promise burned in me. Just not yet. Now, years have slipped by like pages in a book, and James is in college. He studies psychology, dreaming of helping children who have lived through storms like his own. My body has healed enough for me to walk again, though the limp stays with me like an old song, soft, constant, a reminder of that day. The scars on my heart have faded too. They're no longer sharp and raw, but they are still tender, and that tenderness has taught me the real meaning of healing. I've stood in front of countless grief support groups, sharing what I've learned about forgiveness, about the power of choosing peace over bitterness, but I've never spoken of my near-death experience in those meetings. It's too sacred, too personal, a fire I keep in my chest, and yet the lessons of it are in every word I speak. Every year, on the anniversary of the accident, Thomas and I meet at the cemetery. He brings flowers for Elizabeth, for Anna. We stand in silence sometimes, or we talk quietly about memories that still ache. His oldest daughter is getting married next month, and he's asked me to be there. I will. There are nights when the house grows silent and the world outside my window is still, that I close my eyes and try to feel that light again. The warmth, the love, the perfect peace. It's like trying to hold on to a dream that fades with the first light of morning, but I know it's there, waiting, and I'm no longer afraid of death. How could I be after knowing what waits on the other side? It's been 15 years. I've learned that forgiveness isn't a single act you do once and walk away from. It's a choice you wake up and make again and again. I rise each morning and decide not to live in the guilt of the past or the fear of the future. I live with gratitude, holding on to the life I still have. I live to honor those I've lost, to fill each moment with meaning, with love. And each night before I drift to sleep, I whisper into the quiet, "I'll see you soon." In my heart, I know that in the blink of an eye, in the shift of time, in the light of eternity, I will be with them again. As I write this now, I can feel how small words are beside what I experienced. How do you explain a love so deep, a peace so perfect, that it can quiet every fear? Yet I share it anyway, because the truth I carried back from that vision is too powerful to hide. There is no guilt so heavy it cannot be lifted, no loss so deep it cannot be healed, no separation so final it cannot be bridged. This world may sometimes feel dark and broken, but there's a light that burns brighter than anything we can see or understand. My name is Daniel Peets, and for 10 minutes and 15 seconds, my heart stopped beating. For that small stretch of eternity, I discovered that death is not the end of the story.